Good evening. It's that time again. That's right, the power source. We're broadcasting live from Upper Room in Preston, Minnesota. And I'm glad that you tuned in tonight because you're about to hear some awesome testimonies of what God has done, some very personal experiences that some very awesome people have had. Let me introduce our guests tonight. We've got Brian Palm and Andrea Palm. I think you're related somehow, right? Husband and wife or something like that. So they are married. I can confirm that. So well, thanks for joining us. We were kind of discussing who to have on as guests, and obviously we knew that you'd experienced some really awesome stuff that probably a lot of people at home can really grasp. That is very personal and probably something that a lot of people have gone through, or they know someone else that has gone through something similar. But I guess before we get to all the awesome testimony stuff, I want you to maybe tell us a little bit about yourselves. Who are you? Where are you from? Start from birth. Ready, go. No, no, I'm kidding.
Go ahead.
My name is Brian Palm. We live in Caledonia, Minnesota. We have 5 little boys. We've been married now for 10 years this year. So it's our big 1-0.
Yay! That's awesome.
Yeah.
And both from a Christian background, obviously. We've known them since before they were married.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact number of years, but it's been a long time.
Like 2012,
yeah,
maybe?
it's been 15 years, let's say.
Yeah.
We'll round it to 15 probably, we've known you. But before you had kids, before you were married, both single, not even dating yet. It's been an awesome journey that we've seen you take here. But it's...
You actually were the first person to prophesy over me.
Really?
Yes, you
That's
were.
awesome.
And you probably don't even remember.
No, that's the crazy
In fact,
thing.
may I real quick?
Yeah.
Because it was such I can be quite skeptical sometimes. So I feel like God is quite direct with me sometimes. And,
I do that too.
the first time I had gone to church, Andrea got a bunch of people to come over and pray for me.
Okay.
And you took a leap of faith. I remember it. You probably don't because it was really just mundane and ordinary. But I had been reading a book that morning called Jonathan Livingston Seagull. And it's just about a bird, a seagull that flies over a beach. And I don't really remember a whole lot else about the book. And you were praying for me, and you took a leap of faith that would be crazy to normal or to other people. You're like, I just see a bird flying over a beach, and I don't know what this is about. And I'm like, well, it's not anything profound. I was reading a book this morning about a bird flying over a beach.
It's just God showing off for you is really what it is. And for me.
Yeah.
And for me.
It was just God showing up saying, I see you.
I'm here.
And I'm here with
I know
you.
what's going on. And that's actually really awesome to hear. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about that because we actually discussed this a little bit on a number of the shows, like the prophetic, how it works, how God likes to talk to us, if we let him, and how it's so easy to discount some of those things because often when you're praying for people and experiencing something prophetic, a lot of times it's a whisper or just it's not like there's trumpets in the background going or angels singing or something like that. It's something very normal, but you can feel it in here, and it's so easy to discount a bird flying over a beach, But literally, we were in the middle of praying for you, Why that? Of course, we're asking God to speak to us, be here with us, You're welcome, all that, and why would He not, So it's like, why would you discount that and see what God did? I mean, it's just awesome. It's the other really interesting thing, this has been my experience with the prophetic, and maybe, I don't know if you've experienced this too, but a lot of times when it's a personal message like that, I sometimes won't even remember it the next day. Like a person will say, "Hey, remember what you told me yesterday?" And it's a weird thing, and I don't know if this is just the way I experience it or what, but it's like there's a message there, and I give it, and then it's that person's or something like that. It's a strange thing how that works. Not all of them, but a lot of times if it's a more personal thing like that, so that's awesome to be reminded of that. That's very encouraging, and I love memories like that. That's awesome. So so that was probably one of the first experiences that we had, like praying together and stuff like that, probably at that church. But yeah, so what? So I'm curious to know kind of a little bit about your backgrounds too before we like get into really the heart of the testimony here. Like, were you both raised in church backgrounds? I mean, I know a little bit, I guess.
I
but
was, yeah.
Yeah, you were.
Yeah.
Were you raised in like a Christian background at all? Or?
Not really. My grandmother was more of a Christian Scientist.
Interesting. Okay.
But we never went to church very much growing up or anything like that. It just wasn't a part of things.
Interesting.
So.
Yep. And there have actually been it's really neat to see the wide array of experiences and backgrounds that our guests come from, and then seeing what God's done in this whole array of backgrounds. Like, it doesn't matter, what you grew up in or where you were at. Like, God will find you. God's got a way, and it's awesome. And yeah, obviously you've seen some things now, experienced some things. Like, okay, God, you're real, and very much involved, and yeah, and obviously we let's see, have we had Andrea's folks on here yet? I know that they were upstairs.
Her mom. We haven't done.
Yep. Her mom, Marilyn Lee.
We should. Your parents would have a lot.
Yeah. We'll ask them next probably. But Marilyn Lee is your mom. Yeah.
Give him a zone.
Yeah.
Marilyn Lee is your mom. She was upstairs. She did a worship set with us actually this last season, and we'll see if she can come back again this season. That was awesome. So go back and watch that if you can. But anyways, so that's interesting. You said you grew up in kind of a household that didn't really attend church. You kind of had some Christian Scientist background. That's an interesting term or way to put it too. And then along came Andrea, who had probably, what would you describe your background as?
I've been a Christian since I was 3 years old.
Yeah.
I literally gave my life to Jesus when I was 3 years old. I remember it very clearly on my parents' bed. And so that's my background with the Lord, is just a very slow process, I suppose, and a very refining one along the way. Just God, taking me
just kind of
in my journey.
Yeah, kind of growing, and God was always the backdrop, kind of.
Yeah. I
journey,
mean, obviously, I think the biggest thing for me was just always realizing that along the way, there would be these moments that I remember very clearly of making the choice to continue following the Lord. And that's just something I feel like is a huge thing to note for anyone that has grown up in the church. You can say, it's been easy or something, but it is a conscious choice along the way that you have to make if you're going to serve the Lord well. And
there are 1,000 reasons not to go to church on Sunday, or to go to this event, or to pray, or to trust God, or
And there's been plenty of times where God has told me to get back over the fence into where I should be.
You're out of your pen. Yeah, get back in there.
Get back to where I'm supposed to be with the Lord.
That's good too. Good to have those moments too. But and obviously knowing you, involved in worship a lot, leading worship at a couple different churches now, and in fact, Andrea, you might recognize her from upstairs too at Upper Room. She also did a worship set. With a group from Legacy Church, right?
Mm-hmm.
So go back and watch that too.
and come back.
And come back again, yeah.
Every week.
Yeah, every week, Tara says, yeah. So we'll maybe get into a little bit of that later on too. But you know, I would like people to know, you know, right out of the gate, the really awesome thing you experienced, because I think that's a prime example of faith in action and God in action in our everyday lives. And this directly involves, well, a couple of your kids, right? So how do you want to tell the story? I'll leave it to you.
Story time.
Story time. Everyone
We should
listen
have
up.
like a little jingle we play.
You want me
Story
to
time.
preface and then you can start the actual story?
Yeah, you talk
So-
better than I do.
Good teamwork.
We have 5 boys. Our 5 boys were all born in 7 years,
Something like that.
somewhere in there. We've been married for 10 years, and our oldest is 9. So
So if that tells you anything about our exciting life.
we decided that we were gonna wait a year after getting married before having kids, and then 3 months later, she was like, "I'm pregnant."
That's awesome.
And so we rolled right into it. After our first one, she ended up getting pregnant again right away, and it ended up being twins. So the first of our twins was born at 23 weeks.
Yeah.
So full term is 40 weeks. 23 weeks is when he was born, and then our oldest, he was 9 months to the day
Wow.
on the day when our first twin Xander was born.
Wow.
So yeah, I guess that's
A
where
lot
you can
happening
go
all at
ahead
Yes,
and
it was.
take over.
Yeah.
So it was. We knew something was wrong. There was, definitely something wrong, and so we thought we had lost at least one of the twins at home. We thought one of them had died, and I guess the only, the lightest way of putting it, but we thought one of them had already passed while I was using the restroom, and we went straight to the hospital, and the whole way there thinking he was already dead, thinking we had lost him, and both of us asking God along the way, God, what's going on? We lost one of our sons. He's gone, and Brian has said many times that just saying, God, our son, and God telling him specifically, he was my son first, and that that hurt and that pain is God's as well.
Yeah, he
And-
didn't tell me your son is fine.
Yeah.
Your son's gonna live. Or I'm sorry or anything like that. He said he was my son first.
Huh.
So whatever you think you're going through,
Mhm.
he's mine.
Yeah.
I was trusting him with him, but he's my son first.
And,
Yeah.
and when you say that God was saying that, like when you were praying about it, that's what he was kind of speaking.
No,
or
I
did you, like,
heard
hear
that.
a-
I heard that on the way to the hospital. I heard
Interesting.
him say he was my son first.
Yeah.
He didn't
That's
say anything
awesome.
else to me.
Yeah,
Yeah, it didn't
Like-
give us anything more to go on, but
Oh man.
it was
Wow.
definitely just that moment of, almost like God wanting us to surrender everything right then and there. Just kind of like, if we didn't surrender everything right then and there, I felt like in my heart I wasn't gonna get through whatever was next if I didn't just surrender it right then and there. And we got to the hospital, and of course they rushed me right in, and they did an ultrasound. They couldn't find him at first,
Oh my.
and then they finally found him. He was in the birth canal, and
Wow.
they said he's coming right now.
Wow.
And they, one doctor was crying I mean, she was already coming off a long shift, I think, but she was crying, and the doctor delivering him was apologizing, saying, I'm so sorry, because everyone there surrounding us was expecting him to be dead
Yep.
or not to live.
Mm.
And they gave him less than an 8% chance of survival.
Wow.
Well, that was the statistic.
That was
yes.
That's
the
the
statistic
statistic, yeah.
at that
Kids that
age.
born at 23 weeks.
Oh,
Um,
man.
and for, you know, I mean, that's, you know, legal abortion age.
Hmm.
They said he's, you know, this is very, very little chance of his survival, and
Hmm.
they whisked him off to the NICU, and that was it. Then they tried to stop labor for me because of the second
Mhm.
twin. They were in 2 separate sacks, so
Mhm.
they said, let's try and stop labor because in this circumstance, the second one usually doesn't survive.
Wow. Oof.
And,
So that
and
again
his-
was their statistic.
Yeah.
the
The
water
second
had
one wasn't.
broke. Yeah.
On the second.
Yeah, the
For-
second one, his
so
water
Gideon's
had not broken.
water had not broke.
Okay.
So Xander's did break, and
Huh.
he had to be born.
Huh.
He couldn't stay in the womb. Gideon, the water hadn't broke, so they tried to stop
Yeah.
the labor.
So they,
So,
yeah.
how do they even do that? Like, they give you some sort of medication to kind of
Yep,
just
they
stop
gave me
it?
a medicine, and then on top of it, they put in a stitch to actually
Sure.
suture me shut
Wow.
and keep him in the womb.
And did you have to like not move? Like you're
I was
they're
out.
like
Yeah, they put
I
it
was
out.
they
out.
put you out. Yeah.
I was
Okay.
out, thank God.
Man, oh man, I can't
Yeah.
imagine. Yeah.
But they,
Wow.
I mean, and then the craziest thing about it was, I mean, he just kept living in the womb. Like, he just
Huh.
kept going. And every, you know, we had, I mean, we've talked about it before, but the perinatologist that was following the case, I mean, I call him the Tony Stark of the medical field, he had a photographic memory.
Huh.
And he often said, I just don't really have any information past, what was it, like 3-4 weeks, 5 weeks?
Yeah,
Wow.
you know, there's a lot of kids that are born, you know,
Separate.
not on the same day
Yeah.
and stuff. But
Yeah.
the longer you go past that date of the first birth,
Mhm.
the less and less statistical data there is
Wow.
Yeah, survival.
on how everything
So-
goes and stuff.
So they were in uncharted territory
They
here
were,
in a lot of ways.
and
yeah.
there were times where he'd come into, you know, my room the next day, just about, I don't know.
Oh, man.
I don't know. We're gonna find out together what's gonna go on.
I
You
mean,
know.
this is just like true raw faith is literally what you have to operate on. Then
Yeah.
you don't have knowledge like the doctor's knowledge. They're literally going,
Yeah.
So it's, I mean, that is literally
Yeah.
walking on the water and, you know, trusting you're not going to sink, you know, like, God, you've got me, you know.
Yeah. So his, I
Wow.
mean, Gideon staying in the womb is really just blowing away that main first statistic of that they normally don't survive,
Mhm.
and he just blew right through that. And then he stayed in another 6 weeks,
Goodness.
and then they were
Oh.
like, well, and even
Mind-boggling.
yeah, another
That's
6
mind-boggling,
weeks he got to
yeah.
stay in. So he was
Wow.
born at 29, and even then he kind of blew through everything. He didn't need to be intubated. He didn't need any
Whoa.
oxygen. All he needed was just a little bit of pressure.
It was for
to-
the first day or two.
Yeah, like I
believe
mean, he
was
really
on, but-
didn't need
Huh.
hardly anything. I mean, he just, and then he started, you know, feeding on his own, and I mean, he just blew through
Wow.
all of it, and
Huh.
it, yeah.
Yeah, he actually got to go home before Xander did. Who
Oh, I'm
was born
sure, yeah.
much
Yeah.
much earlier.
Wow. So at 29 weeks, how big of a child was
He was 2
Gideon?
pounds.
But
Okay.
2 pounds 14 ounces,
Which
so
is incredible because Sander was
1
one
pound.
1 pound.
8 ounces.
Man, oh man.
Could he fit?
Yeah.
Like fit in your
He was
palm.
11 and a half inches long, so the
Yeah.
size of a piece of paper, long.
Huh.
But
Yeah, if he would
That's
stretch
actually-
out. It was
Yeah. If
pretty,
he would
pretty
stretch
decent,
out.
really, yeah.
Yeah, so he was like tall,
Huh.
but he was still only a pound and a half.
Right.
Wow, incredible. So what ended up happening? I mean, so, okay. So twin number one, let's say.
Yeah, sorry.
So they whisked him away to the NICU unit, and then what happened there? I mean,
Everything. They intubated him. They put IVs in him. They
At that point,
I mean-
his skin isn't even developed yet.
yeah. You could
So-
see through it. It was
You
translucent.
could, you could see through him. He looked
Yeah.
just red, like a burn
Wow.
victim or something like that.
Wow.
So he was
Huh.
he was in his incubator or the things, and he was to the size to where they had to, when they gave him IVs and stuff, they had to put him in his head because
Wow.
A, the bones aren't developed
Yeah.
yet, and B, the veins in his arms and stuff were
Yeah.
too tiny. They just could not
Yep.
do it.
Yep.
So,
Wow.
yeah, they had to do all of that, but
That
just
That must have been
Keep
an
'em-
incredible
Yeah.
experience for them
It's-
too to work
I mean,
on.
the craziest thing about it is that when we finally saw him, I mean, even though like his skin translucent, you could see the veins through it. You could practically see his heart beating in there,
Mhm.
But perfect,
Hmm.
perfectly formed. Every little bit of him perfectly formed
At 23 weeks.
at 23 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean,
Huh.
and yes, needing help, yes, needing all of that support, but perfectly
Very
formed.
much alive.
Yeah. Just a
Wow.
very tiny little baby.
And so the doctors were like, we're gonna keep this kid alive, we're gonna do everything we can, even though we don't think he's gonna survive. I mean, at what point did they go, wow, this is this is actually kind of a miracle that this happened, that.
probably
That's
within a minute after him being born, the fact that he was still alive
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
that's I think
Yeah.
when everybody started like, okay, let's
do
go.
this. We're gonna
Yeah.
save
Because
this.
Didn't expect that.
up until that point, everyone's just kind of not us, but
the medical
everyone,
professionals
yeah,
were like,
all of the
oh,
medical professionals are just like, I'm gonna do what I can, but
Huh.
Yeah.
Wow.
so
And through all
then
that-
another moment goes by and they're like, okay, let's try for another one, and then another moment goes by and they're like, okay, this might actually work.
I mean,
You know?
literally, you had to really trust God 100% because literally you're surrounded by a team of professionals in their own place, telling you the opposite of what God's, probably
Yes.
telling you in that moment, and I mean, that is the epitome of faith right there. That is,
What is
Wow.
strange though is that I think because, and I don't know how you felt about it, I guess, honestly, but at the time, it just, he was out there with them, and it's not like I could see him. Was I concerned? Absolutely, but at the same time, I wasn't like freaking out or anything
like,
like that, but I
"Was it-
think it was just because I had completely surrendered him to God already.
Mhm.
There wasn't I guess, and I can say that about the entire time that he was in the NICU, I never felt a complete freak out mode or anxiety, panic attack or anything. It was just always, well, he's with God.
yeah.
He's with God. He's gonna have to take care of him for us because we can't do it.
Oh man.
Well, in that moment, or in those moments, I guess, that whole time period, God prefacing the whole experience with, he's my son first.
Mhm.
It just forced me, and she was going through something very similar, but we found out later, but it forced me to be like, okay then, no matter what happens here,
Mhm.
no matter what happens, I've got to do my part and he's got to do his.
Mhm.
Him saying he's my son first.
Yeah.
That was him saying also, I'm going to do my part. He's my son.
Huh.
And I'm going to do my part, but I need you to do yours. I'm trusting you
Mhm.
with him. You do your part and you pray and you fight.
Yeah.
I'm going to do my part from my end.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
find out at the hospital in those times how much they don't know about the medical field. These doctors are amazing. Do not get me wrong in any way.
Yeah.
These doctors
Yeah.
are amazing.
Yeah.
There was a few that we had to deal with where it's like, I wish you weren't trying to help my child and somebody else was. But, you know, every doctor that...
Very diplomatic way to put that.
That's
Yes,
good. Yeah.
very diplomatic.
Everybody that worked with Xander and Gideon
They
was amazing.
Incredible.
But, you know, we always view it like, okay, what's going on and what are you doing to fix it? And they're like, we think this is happening and we're trying this. It's like,
They're
Yes.
practicing this.
And it's like, we think his lungs are filling up with fluid and we're trying this to get that to stop.
Huh.
And it's like, it makes you realize that they don't just have like a scanner that tells you every single
Right.
thing that's going on
Right.
inside the body. They can't cut him open and look inside and see what's happening.
Right.
They have
Yeah.
to gauge
Look
with
at
what they have.
symptoms Yep.
And
Oh.
so every step of the
Wow.
way, it was just, okay, you do your part. You're going to work with Sander. You're going to help him through this. You're going to do the things that you know.
Yeah.
And we're going to do our part. We're going to pray. We're going to
Yeah.
fight in all the ways that we know.
Yeah.
And
Did they know you were Christians or like
they found out.
They found out. Okay. So what's that mean? I'm curious. Like, what does that mean? Yeah.
Well-
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, we talked about it openly. We weren't shy about saying we believe in God here, you know, and that, you know, God's gonna take care of them, and you know.
That's interesting.
guess it
What were their responses to that?
Well,
I mean,
it was to a degree, it was the puzzlement because, like she said, we weren't freaking out constantly. We
Yeah.
weren't like, why aren't you doing this to help my child? And why
Yeah.
aren't you doing
Where's my
this?
baby? I need to
I
see
mean,
my
like,
baby.
Yeah.
we had some talks with them because for babies in the NICU, they have these little sugar doses or whatever they're called. I can't remember.
It's just sugar
It's
water.
just sugar water, but it calms the kids down.
Huh.
And it's like giving them some medicine just to calm them down. And Xander was hooked up to all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So he couldn't be like thrashing and stuff. And we were like, I understand that you need to calm him down, but he is a baby.
Yeah.
Okay? If you need to calm him down and we're not here, try soothing him first. Treat him
Yeah.
like a baby. Don't just walk in
Yeah.
and squirt something in his mouth and okay, he's calm now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we had to kind of advocate a little bit
Wow.
because as you know, as any nurse or any person that works in a NICU, you have more than one child you're taking care of. You know, things get busy. It's easy to view it differently.
Was there
but-
any like nurse or doctor that you felt was a godsend
Yeah.
that you were glad was there?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
The one I remember specifically, she was very open to, like, for instance, there was he needed to be re-intubated, so a bigger tube
It's a
to
process.
fit him because he was outgrowing the smaller one and it wasn't being effective anymore. And I remember that doctor was very open to, like, well, since he's not going to be intubated right now, we can see if he'll breathe on his own.
Yeah.
You know, and being willing to take those steps, not just a downer on, well, you know, his numbers are this and this and this, so it's
Yeah.
not going to work, you know. Because we had a few of them too that after talking with them, you felt, wow.
They were always expecting
the
the worst
downers.
all the time. Yeah.
You
It's
know.
always prepare you for the
Yeah,
worst. So,
yeah. But this one,
Huh.
I mean, they always seemed very positive and ready to take
Huh.
the leap of faith
Yeah.
on stuff. And, you know, Xander, almost every time, he
That's how
rose
he
to the
works.
occasion. That's
Huh.
how he still does things
Huh.
now, is you give him the opportunity, and just when you think he's never gonna do it, you think he's never gonna be able to make it,
Huh.
Same with his birth. He thought he wouldn't make it, and he had less than 8% chance of
Yeah.
survival. He rises to the occasion, and he completely proves you wrong. And that
Overcomer.
was this
That's
one.
awesome.
All of his numbers,
Wow.
all of his stats, his O2, everything said he was not ready to breathe on his own.
Huh.
And this doctor said, I'm willing to try it anyway. And she gave him the chance, and boom, he did it.
It's really interesting. There's a lesson there too, especially for people that maybe work in the medical field, but really anywhere. Our interactions with people. I mean, especially as Christians, I mean, the way that we present ourselves, it shows a lot about what's going on inside of us, I think, too. What we believe, you know, whether we have hope, whether we have joy, you know, whether we have faith. You know, you could probably even tell whether a person believes in God sometimes just by the way they're responding in a situation like this. And you saw that firsthand probably, not just with yourselves, but with the people around you even.
Yeah.
It's interesting, and I think it's something as Christians we should be more aware of, like the way we carry ourselves and respond to situations like that. And I mean, there might be things that you need to do that's different from what the rest of the world's doing in that moment, and it might make all the difference. So yeah, and it's such a small thing too, like, yeah, let's give him a shot, let's try this, you know. I think he can do this, maybe, you know, let's see. So
He's always been a perfect example of that part of every person's walk with Christ. You need to move your feet. You can't just stand there and expect things to change. And in every time we didn't think he was ever going to walk. He just would crawl everywhere, and we were starting to wonder, you know, like, is he ever going to walk? And then just all of a sudden one day he got up and walked and never went back to crawling
Yeah, he
again.
just got up and walked across the room
You know?
one day.
It's just always, he needs to take that step, and then it happens.
Yeah.
Even though there's no sign beforehand that it's going to happen. And that's such an important part of our walk, is that we need to take a step, and then it happens. You know, it's not like you just stand there, things start happening, and then you're like, oh, I guess I better get up and
now
go do
it's
it.
safe to go. Yeah.
God always wants us to take that step
That leap
first.
of faith.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh,
it
we
were.
have discussed that in a few different scenarios on this show, actually.
Yeah.
And it's an important theme. It's a very biblical theme, actually, because that's literally the ultimate act of faith. Your
Yes.
life might be on the line according to the world sometimes, but it's really not, because God's got you, you know. And it's so interesting. I'd be so excited to see what he's like when he's 90 or whatever. You know, I have a hunch he'll still be the same. Like, the world's like, oh, you better slow down a little bit, and he's out running a marathon or something like that. Or I don't know what, you know. But God, the awesome thing is, he's got this legacy now, you know, and I think there will be a knowledge in him, you know, that God still has him, you know. When he's 102, God still has him, you know. And what a blessing to know that. I mean, as Christians, we should know that, but man, it's played out. It's played out. You've seen that.
Yes.
So it's, oof.
I think the cool
Wow.
thing with him is, you know, I was telling, you know, your wife Tara, I think it was on the phone, just that I had written something just about his birthday and the fact that, you know, thank you, Lord, for the miracle of his birth and survival, and saying that I didn't realize until after I'd written and went back to reread it, but I had written that, you know, Xander chose life. It wasn't just us choosing to save his life, to make sure everything was done, you know, to save him. It wasn't just that. It was Xander choosing life every single day and fighting for life. And that's just something you don't hear really talked about a whole lot, of these tiny, tiny babies that are born and giving them the chance to choose life. And, you know, giving them that moment in the NICU of fighting, letting them fight for their life that God gave them. And, you know, Xander's testimony started out pretty dramatic, Just kind of,
You know he's gonna
Boom,
change the
you
world.
know, and
He's gonna change the
he's
world.
still extremely dramatic
In
about
some way.
he's still a very dramatic, young man. Just so much theater around him, but
That's awesome.
his testimony
That's,
is not done.
yeah.
It's still growing. It's still gonna be, developing over time. It's
Man, oh man, exciting. Yeah, I'm really excited to see what God does and continues to do. And then, obviously, Gideon, is another miracle. I mean, literally, it's two miracles
There's two of 'em.
in two totally different ways, in a way. I mean, it's just God really showing off here is really what it is. Like, astonishing the medical professionals in two profoundly different ways, really, is what happened. I mean, if I was one of the people dealing with the two of you and I wasn't a Christian or believed in God at all, by the end I'd be like, maybe I should look into this a little bit more. Maybe there's some stuff I don't know because my knowledge did not get them through this, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's more going on here than what I've been taught or something,
I feel like
But-
Xander's a very loud miracle and Gideon was a silent miracle.
Yeah, silent
It's just
miracle.
like very opposite.
He's like, I just chilled for 6 weeks. I didn't
Yeah.
have to
Is
do
that
it.
is Gideon's personality too? Is quieter?
Sometimes.
He can be a little sporadic.
Yeah.
But
he can be very
really,
quiet
yes,
and very
his,
loud.
his life has kind of been the quiet miracle,
Mhm.
like to a degree almost overlooked
Yeah.
because of, Xander being so vibrant, if you will. Gideon can often get overlooked, but he, in another way, just every time you try and explain something to Gideon, he will sit there and look at you with a
Huh.
look
Yeah.
like he doesn't understand.
Huh.
And you might have to explain it a few times, but
Huh.
then when it gets there, he's got it.
Yeah.
He's good. He
Yeah.
moves on. No more need for conversation about
Yeah.
it. He,
That's kind of been him.
That's
Just-
interesting.
the way he works, and he breezed through the NICU. I mean, comparatively.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Right.
Obviously, he still spent 2 months, I believe, in the NICU. 3 months? 2 months?
No, October until December.
End
He
of
came
December,
home
yeah.
before Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So end of October to like the mid-December.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he kind of breezed through most of that and got some weird hats out of the deal.
Yep. Weird NICU hats.
There are people
What
who
does that mean?
No, I'm not sure if we want to go on that rabbit trail.
Are you talking about like the knitters?
yeah,
Yeah.
the
Okay.
people
Oh, the
who
knitters.
knit hats for the
Yeah.
NICU,
Okay.
and some of them are
You got
amazing.
the interesting ones.
Yeah, the
And
tube
some
socks.
of them were.
Got it. Tube socks. That's
But,
awesome.
I mean, always
I can
appreciate
picture
it.
it. I can picture it. That's awesome. Yeah. That-
Anyways.
So they came in handy though. That's awesome.
Uh-huh.
That's so keep knitting those. Whoever's knitting them,
Yes.
keep making
Yes.
them. They
Great
came in
hats.
handy. Yeah, what a blessing. So by the end of it, you'd mentioned the Iron Man doctor, or Tony Stark doctor, or whatever. by the end of it, I mean, what was their take on it? Were they like, man, this was awesome? This something really special happened here. Like.
I think they were all just kind of. I mean, I don't know. It was. They all just.
There probably wasn't a
At
deep
that
conversation
point,
about
no,
it.
there
I'm
wasn't a
assuming.
real
It was
deep conversation with any of them. I would say the conversation I had was more with one of my nurses, who, because I was in the post labor and delivery postpartum department, which was weird because I was pregnant, but also postpartum. So they had both complications there to look after. But one of my nurses, she would come in periodically and she told me once that she just liked sitting in my room because it was peaceful. And I mean, I didn't really have a whole lot to do other than read my Bible and, although he snuck my sewing machine in.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. But,
That's awesome.
I mean, she would come in and just sit and talk with me a lot. And she told me probably more than the doctors as far as what was surrounding the whole thing. And I remember saying that everyone was just kind of holding their breath, not sure if, like, because it wasn't going the way they expected. Nothing was happening the way that it should have, according to whatever journal.
Yeah.
Nothing was going the way they thought it would. They made me on bed rest for the first couple weeks, and then
6
finally
weeks.
they're like, no, okay, finally, you can go in a wheelchair. So he would push me around the hospital in a wheelchair, pretend I was old. And,
Of course.
and then finally they're like, well, I guess you've gotten past 4 weeks, we're not really sure it's gonna hurt a whole lot if you start walking. So then I would start walking around, and I would take walks around the hospital. And again, she said nothing was going the way they thought it would. So that was the feeling. They didn't know what to do with that.
Later, you would have, the next baby.
Yeah, they really thought that he was gonna come the next couple days, the next week, and just, finally, time ticking by. I started asking the doc, like, can I go home and do this instead of being here?
Go home and do this.
Like, do I have to sit here? And she's like, let's not do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, just no one knew what to do with it because they didn't. It was
It's interesting.
completely
Do you,
unknown.
do you hold any records, at least at the hospital, for the biggest gap in between twins?
I don't think we have the record.
I don't think we have the record. No,
I mean,
I'd have to look it up, and I don't even
Yeah.
know.
I'm
Yeah.
like, that's a long time.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's incredible.
yeah,
I love that it kind of confounded the wise, that God was kind of showing off in that way. Like, wisdom, the worldly wisdom is good to a point, but there are scenarios where God exists, and operates that the earthly wisdom can't reach. It's kind of and that's where faith exists, right? That's where we exist as Christians, and that made all the difference here. And that's what's so cool about all of this. Literally, the fact that you were prepared going to the hospital and that you'd heard that, I just keep playing it through my head, how different that would have been. But wow, incredible. So now the kids are obviously, how old are they now?
8.
8.
Yes,
Yeah.
the
so-
twins are 8.
Wow, and I've seen them a couple times at church. I think
Just a couple?
Yeah, running around,
And walking quietly.
walking. Yep, walking.
Yeah,
they don't
walking
crawl.
quietly.
Yeah, they walk.
Yeah.
Next
Walking.
to us without
Yes.
yelling, all of them very
Perfect.
nicely.
Perfectly behaved.
Perfectly
Yes.
behaved.
Sit around.
None of them yell
No.
or get out of hand.
Attack stuffed bears.
Or pull the fire alarm at church.
That never happened.
Oh,
Xander has
what?
pulled the fire alarm
You
twice.
guys weren't there.
A miracle from God can't do that, right? That doesn't make sense.
So they are 8.
Yes.
The
So-
firemen
They're
wanted to get him over there and talk to him and stuff. I'm like, you can try.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
He's gonna be like, can I see your fire truck?
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Well, I mean that it's an awesome testimony of.
Corey just said, I remember that.
Okay, we just had someone comment. Yeah, they remember that. Someone from their church just mentioned that. So, okay, so it did happen.
He was the,
It did happen. Yes. And I think it actually happened a couple of times.
It happened twice, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Sorry, Pastor
oh my.
Jake.
Yeah, exactly. It's an awesome testimony, and I hope that people at home, it changes their views a little bit on what's possible with God. And even when the whole world is telling you no, if God says yes, listen to God in that moment. No matter what the world is telling you, if God says something, that's what you should be, focused on, and that's what you did. I mean, that's the important part of this is that, and God came through in a major way. I think-
Yes. When he You know, when all the doctors were just, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. Before
Yeah.
Xander was born and stuff, it's just like, he's not dead yet.
Yeah.
Okay? Let's at least wait until he's died before we all start
Yeah, a funeral.
consigning
Yeah.
him here.
Oh my
And
god.
it
But that
just,
was the feeling in the room.
and
Yeah.
that
Especially when the doctor started crying. I mean,
Yeah.
that's gotta be.
That was
jeepers.
a little rough.
Oh, yeah.
Not her fault, of course.
Yeah.
No.
But you know, it just, that's what you need to have. You
Yeah.
need to have that ability to say, okay, this is what everything says. This is what the evidence is leaning towards, but it's not there.
Mhm.
Okay? So we've got to focus on what we do know.
Mhm.
And that is, he's not dead yet.
Mhm.
He could still live.
Mhm.
And I'm going to treat every moment like he's going to live until I know otherwise.
Yeah.
And even then, I'm still going to take it a few steps further, probably.
Mhm.
But
And you know, we've used the example, you know, a couple times where, you know, of stepping out of the boat onto the water, you know, and seeing Jesus out there on the water, you know, and you've got everything else going on around him, you know, the raging sea, right? The people in the boat freaking out, you know, and you're scared out of your mind, you know, and Jesus is out there, and everything you know as a fisherman or living by the sea, you know that when you step on that water, you're going down into the depths and you're gonna die, and especially in a storm like that, right? That's what everything tells you, and all the weather and everything the storm tells you, and Jesus is right there, you know, and it's like, if you focus on Jesus and you know that he's got you, you know, walking on that water isn't a problem, you know. It's when you start worrying more about the waves than seeing Jesus there, you know, that makes a difference. And it's, in my opinion, kind of the same here. I mean, you had that moment of him saying, I got this, you know, he was my son first, you know, that's Jesus right there on the water, you know, like, I'm here, you know, and yeah, there's gonna be waves, you know, but I'm not leaving. I'm gonna be right here, and you can do this, you know. You'll be able to walk on the water, you know, and that's what happened here. It was like, it didn't take any special knowledge otherwise about walking on water, like I have to put my foot a certain way. It wasn't that at all. It was faith, pure faith. I mean,
I think it's
just
interesting. I remember at one point they told us that Xander's lungs were filling up with fluid. They had taken an X-ray because his stats were dropping, whatever, and they said that his lungs are filling up. That it was almost a whiteout on the X-ray, and
wow.
so that was bad. And they said that things needed to turn around really quickly in order for him to survive. And I called my mom and dad and let them know, hey, Xander needs prayer right now. As long as they're filling up, we need to be, really praying for him. And the crazy part is that they were at, it was a conference up in the cities with your father-in-law.
I was gonna say my dad was always calling us. You
Yes.
need to pray. You need to pray.
Yes. And they were up in the cities with him. And at some point, he talked to the leaders at this conference. I mean, there's hundreds of people there, pastors everywhere and stuff. And he talked to the leaders, and one of them got up in front and said, we need to stop everything because there's a little baby in the cross that is fighting for his life, and we need to stop everything and pray for him.
Wow. That's awesome.
And on top of it, and I
man.
didn't realize, but I also called a friend that I had when I lived out in California, and I called her on a whim, and I said, I don't know why, but I feel like I need to call you and tell you to pray for my son. And she goes, oh, what's going on? I told her about it, and she's like, I'm in Scotland at a pastor's training
No
camp.
way.
I'm not sure if I told you about this or not, but she said this is a pastor's
Wow.
training camp, and there are people here from Russia and France, Spain. I mean, they were from everywhere.
Wow.
And they called their groups And I mean, there were literally people from all around the world
Worldwide.
suddenly praying for Xander. And I can't
Wow.
remember the timeline of how long it took, but I'm pretty sure his lungs cleared within a half hour.
Oh my
A
gosh.
half hour.
That's the number that comes
insane.
to mind right away.
It's like you had the
Wow.
like the emergency phone to God.
It
You're
was.
like, we're just,
I
Yeah.
remember very very specifically that it was
Mm.
it was a very short period of time, but I want to say it was a half hour.
I don't remember.
Wow.
I mean, a lot of it is a blur, but that one
Wow.
I remember. And
That's incredible. Well, the response of prayer, I mean, to that situation, to them saying, this is what's happening, doesn't look good, the response being prayer, that should really resonate with us as Christians, like how powerful prayer is
Yeah.
in moments like that. When there's nothing else that can be done, prayer is very powerful, especially corporate prayer where you
Yeah.
have people
Yeah.
agreeing in
Yeah.
prayer, people that
two or more
know what
gathered.
prayer is about, and believe that God can do miracles, I mean, that's the answer. That's the answer. Can you imagine if, as a church, that was our response all the time? All the time was that in those moments where it's impossible? It's like, yeah, let's, God, who's supposed to pray? Who am I supposed to
Yeah.
call? That was another important moment, though, where you're like, obviously God planted something inside your heart in that moment, like this person that I
Yeah.
haven't spoken to in I don't know how long.
It was quite a while since I had spoken to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
And
yeah.
in
maybe
that
a
moment,
text
call
now and
this
again,
person from
but-
California who's now in Scotland at a leaders conference, and they're all going to pray, and then the other conference, all praying for you, all these
Yeah.
leaders, like that's incredible. That's a miracle. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
that should resonate as well with us.
I think it really put in my heart very deeply, and I know you said it at one point, but the responsibility of praying for our kids. I mean, that right there should show it.
Mhm.
What if I hadn't made any calls?
Mhm.
What if I hadn't reached out for prayer at all? What if I hadn't prayed? What if we hadn't prayed? What if we hadn't actually even stopped to pray when Xander was first born? What if there had been no prayer involved? And I'm not saying that God wouldn't have still done it or still could have done it, but our responsibility to pray as believers in the Lord. The prayers of a righteous man avail much. And there's a reason for that, because our responsibility to pray for our kids, to cover them, to constantly be watching over them spiritually like that is been very deeply planted in my heart since then.
Yep, absolutely, and it's kind of interesting too in a way. A lot of the disbelief and the statements that the doctors were making they were also prayers or curses, I guess you could
Yeah.
say, that were being spoken.
Yes,
And
yes.
obviously the blessing is stronger than the curse. We know that. This is proof of that. I mean, here it was, the two of you in the midst of that storm too, with a lot of unbelief and things being said that shouldn't have been getting said about your child, and so it's kind of interesting. There are so many dimensions to this. I mean, there really it's like I think I'd probably be reading, if I'm reading through the Bible, I'd probably at a lot of points be stopping like, man, yeah, I saw this play out in the birth of our children and afterwards, like, man, and this, I saw God do this, like now he just did this in our lives, like, what an awesome testimony. I mean, and I hope your grandkids hear about it, man, Xander's kids, I mean, they should know about like his birth story. That would be so important for them to know, like, you're all a miracle, all of you are a miracle. Your dad was a miracle, like what God did was a miracle, and
Your uncles and your
Yeah.
it's one of those, pivotal moments, in history almost, where you can see God. And we talk about this some too, like we need to think outside of our time and space here a little bit more, like the big picture, because God, controls time and space, right? I mean, he's not restricted by it. So what he just did in Xander's life might ripple through time, and we don't know what might result, 100 years from now or 1,000 years from now, whatever it is, what the result might be, that he did this miracle here, and what will be the ripple effect in this world as a result of that, or in the kingdom. We don't know. That's for God to know, I guess, and us to trust God that you just did something big here that's going to affect a lot of lives. So, yeah, it's that's what's so exciting to me, to see what happens, But I don't know how I even transition to the next topic here. I'm like, I could talk about this all night. There's just so many things here, but before we move, I do want to talk to you a little bit about like worship. That's obviously a big part of your life, and your family's life actually. And wanted to get your take on that. But before we move to that, was there any other thing you wanted to say about the birth of the twins, or that's
one other touch point on the prayer. Us praying and being diligent and knowing what God told us and everything. It was our part of what everybody needed to do to keep him alive. The prayer is our part. It's my part of he was my son first. God had his part, I had my part. But the other part that most of us don't really talk about very much, when she called everybody in the world and told them to pray, and
The United Nations of prayer. Yes.
and when the ripple went out, the Tower of Babel, God literally took a group of people that were so dedicated to one purpose and broke them up, because he said, even without my power, they could do anything. Simply because they were unified in purpose. Simply because they were unified in everything that they were doing, he said they could reach the sky. They could become like me. And so he broke them up and said, you guys are now going to be living somewhere else, and you're not going to be able to talk to each other anymore. The unification of us as people is also powerful.
Yeah.
We prayed, and we all prayed the same thing, and we all said we all agree with the same thing. That's the other half of prayer that I don't hear talked about too much, is that agreement part, and how powerful people getting together and agreeing on something is.
Especially in the body of Christ, or in the church.
Yes.
That's anytime there's an ecumenical service or something, it has a special feel to it, when there are people from a lot of different denominations coming together for a common purpose of worshiping God, worshiping Jesus. There's a special feeling that comes. You can feel it, like there's something special here, and it's almost like it gives you this vision for the church, like if we can somehow come together as a church, the kingdom would just advance.
Yes.
I mean,
there wouldn't be anything that could stop anybody. And
God like that.
by even by the story of the Tower of Babel, even if you were against God, that kind of unification has power. And I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm just saying, like, God broke these people up because they were not unified to him. They were unified in themselves.
So which is destructive too.
So it's powerful. It is powerful. It is a law. It is something that is written, and there's power there, and it worked, and it helped keep our kids alive.
Certainly makes you think differently about other people, and people groups, and how you view them. Like, should I be so quick to throw up a wall between myself and another person, or burn a bridge? It's kind of, we should be building bridges and tearing down walls, and especially as Christians, right?
Yeah.
Especially as Christians. That's what Jesus did. That's literally what Jesus did. Everywhere he went, he brought people together from all kinds of different backgrounds. It's just incredible. If if we could all be that way, how powerful that is. So, wow, that's an excellent takeaway. that's awesome. Very good point. Well, I don't even know how to transition over to this. But.
I'll help you. Jonathan says, "Yay! Hey guys!"
Awesome.
You can explain
Yeah.
who Jonathan is.
Jonathan is a worship leader at Legacy Church over in Onalaska.
He's been here and out there.
Yeah, he's been a guest here. Go listen to his story, his testimony. Very awesome. And then he's also been upstairs too. Actually, I think when Andrew was here. So yeah, go look him up too. Awesome guy. So yeah, he'll know about this next topic then, which is worship. You know, we actually discussed this a little bit when Tara and I were on one of the shows here a couple weeks ago about the importance of worship. You know. And how powerful that is. We just got done talking about, you know, prayer and faith, you know, and the power of unity, you know, a lot of biblical principles there. There's also, you know, wanted to get your take on this. We were kind of discussing, the example we used was, you know, at Jericho, where, you know, they marched around the city 6 times, you know. On the 7th day, they had the priests come out and blow the horns, and literally just the walls came down, you know, in that moment. They didn't even have to raise a sword, you know. It was just God doing something supernaturally in the moment. And I was discussing a little bit about how I've felt that happen during worship sometimes, you know, where it's almost like you don't realize there are walls, you know, spiritually sometimes, you know, just walls that exist in our lives. And how I've literally felt those crumble sometimes in the midst of worship, you know, like when God's presence is there and it's almost like a wall comes down and you go into this different space or something, you know?
Yeah.
And I want to get your take on that, like, because I know you've experienced awesome moments during worship, just like we have, you know.
Yeah.
But I don't know, what are your thoughts? Like, how do you approach worship as a worship leader? You know, how do you approach worship? Like, what is it to you? You know, that's a big question, I know too, but.
Gotta think
You
about
can
that.
do with it as you want. I mean, I don't expect you to give a 2-hour answer.
1 hour.
You
1
know,
hour.
it actually links in a lot with just our story of Xander and everything, honestly. So when I was in the hospital for those 6 weeks, you know, I'd listen to music and stuff, but, you know, I play piano, and there's so much of what I do as worshiping the Lord is just through my piano. So many times I don't want to sing, I don't want to use my voice, I don't want any of that. I just want to let, you know, music go to the Lord, and I didn't have that for quite a while there, and just had to, you know, just worship with my voice if I could. And then I'm on postpartum, so it's not like I can be in my room, you know, holy, just without either waking
I think
someone
that'd be
or
awesome.
really
I know.
frustrating somebody, I don't know.
Yeah.
But after kind of giving that up to the Lord and saying that, you know, I'll worship you in the way that I can. After my bedridden, you know, time was lifted and I was allowed to walk around the hospital, I was diving into the depths of it, and I found a little chapel way down in the basement.
Wow.
Way down in the
Interesting.
basement that was not touched by anybody. And it had a piano in it.
Wow.
And I was just so overjoyed because
Huh.
I could go down there late at night and just sit and play. And nobody was down there. Nobody even knew that I went down there. I mean, maybe I had cameras. I don't know.
Wow.
It was this weird lady.
That's
but
awesome.
so then I could go down there and play. But again, I wasn't quite sure about, you know, just singing out in the middle of the hospital and stuff. But so I just play. And God just began breaking down so much of what I thought worship was, because I had kind of gone from here at like 14 years old, being put on a worship team, and just kind of skyrocketed in my excitement for worship, all of that, started leading songs, all that kind of stuff, and I just kind of blew up inside of me. But it was a fast growth, and it was so fast that I think there were a lot of spaces left in the foundation that should have taken a longer time to fill. And God really started breaking down all of that and going back to the beginning and saying, let's start slower and a harder process, very hard, but a more pure process, just letting me realize that my worship when you're leading, yes, there's a different element, but worship is between you and the Lord.
Yep.
Because
Absolutely.
what are we worshiping if not the Lord? Then it becomes idolatry of something else. If there's anything else that you are really paying attention to other than the Lord, there is something wrong with the worship. And I'm not saying that all these other elements, when you have a team, shouldn't be there. You need to work as one. And it's what he said.
Kind of.
Yeah, it's what he said, working as one. But your goal, what you are fighting for in that moment of worship as a team, should be to put all of the glory on God, nothing else. And the key to that of, having a congregation in front of you is figuring out how to say, let's turn aside and look at this great thing. Being so lit on fire, like the burning bush, that Moses had to turn aside and look, that you should be so on fire for the Lord in your worship, so passionate about him, whether it's with a team or by yourself, but that fire should be so ablaze that you make people turn aside to see this great wonder. And that, I think, is something that has really burned in my heart since then, of saying, I know that there's an element of leading people and showing them how to do that as well, showing them how to actually get their attention on the Lord. There's an element there that I don't think I have entirely the answer to at all.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's exactly it. Yeah.
I don't have an answer to that, and I think it's
I don't think there's a magic
really,
formula or anything like that.
But I do know that God, he is worthy of worshiping his magnificent nature. And if there's anything other than that, it's not the right priority. And however long that takes to light on fire. As well, walking around the walls, how many times, so how many times are we gonna sit and sing a refrain until those walls start coming down? And it all has to do with waiting and listening to the Lord tell us how long to do that.
Not a watch.
Not a watch.
Not a watch.
Yeah, and that's the hard
Not a
part.
clock.
That's the hard part.
Yeah. Oh, wow. And it is interesting you said that, a realization that God is worthy of our praise. That was literally, I think I probably shared this on that same episode that where we were discussing this, about how I literally had a moment in church, I don't know, 3 weeks ago or something like that, where, man, it was the most astounding moment where there was a sudden realization of what an honor it was to worship God in that moment. I mean, that's all it was. It wasn't anything more profound than that, but that was so profound to me, like, what a blessing that I can worship you, God. What an honor. I mean, and it's like in that moment, God showed me what honor was, or something like, I don't know how to even describe it, and it just, whoosh, it went beyond me. A wall I didn't even know was there crumbled. That's the only way I can describe it, is like that wall crumbling, and in that moment there was just this purity of like honor, I guess is what it was. And oh man, because there have been other moments where God has done that. Sometimes it'll just be me remembering, like I want to set a memory stone here. God, I don't want to ever forget that you did this for me. And those moments, like where life gets tough, I think it's important to look back and see what God has done, look what he's done, and sometimes it's easier the further you are away from an event, like the birth of the kids, to look back and be able to look at it maybe from a different viewpoint and be like, man, that happened there too, and that was incredible. Like, I don't ever want to forget what you did there, God, ever. When I'm 110, I want to be able to, oh man, my hair is standing on end. It's incredible. That's what I want, is for God, I want to remember that first moment that I heard your voice, that changed me, yeah. And I think that's part of the way I feel during worship too, is like that thankfulness and honor or something, of those moments and remembering, God. I think that's the purest form of worship, honestly, is God, you are awesome. These are the things that you did, and we're proclaiming it, and it gives you glory, and yeah, it's an interesting thing. The other thing I wanted to talk about though was with Brian, and man, we've talked about the prophetic on this show a lot, and I honestly feel like God has given you, a prophetic gifting, and it's really intriguing the way it played out in the testimony you just gave about your kids. It played a vital role, honestly. You being able to hear God's voice changed everything in that moment. And that's huge, because not every prophetic gifting is the same. Look at the Bible. Look at the prophets. They were vastly different and how it played out and how it happened, and the Holy Spirit, is it's a different experience for every single person, That's kind of the interesting thing. It's so personal. And so I think it's really interesting, how God has used the prophetic in your life and will continue to do so, and you should never compare it to other people's prophetic gifting, because it's so unique and so understated but so powerful. It's like it's God saying, I've got you, when it matters, I'll let you know, and it's like that. You don't have to worry about being overwhelmed with prophetic words for people, and or things like that. At least maybe not in this season. I don't know. Maybe there'll be a season where God will do that. I don't know. God is funny that way,
I have had, but yes, normally he speaks to me just in a way that gives me the assurance, and it gives me that ability to stand on that assurance. The basis of everything we are is interactions with him.
Yep.
Anything less than a solid interaction with him is not living where we're supposed to be living.
Right. Yep.
And so,
yeah, are we any better than like the Pharisees then, who literally had Jesus in front of them and they didn't recognize that God was right in front of them talking to them?
Yes.
It was like they were so concerned with form over substance, it was just insane. Yeah.
They everything needs to be about building your interaction with him. Like if I went blind, I should be able to walk through a room and not run into anything. That's how focused and close we should be with him. That's everything Jesus tried to do his entire life, was spend as much time as he could doing what he heard the Father doing. And so if you're not getting closer to hearing what the Father wants you to do, if you're not sure of that, well, first of all, if you're not hearing it, you're not hearing it. You're not going to be doing it. If you are hearing it and you aren't sure of it, you're not going to be walking on the water. You're hearing him, you're seeing him sitting there, but you're not sure of it. So you're not going to step out on the water. So you just keep moving in that, and then all of a sudden, your simple assurance of where you're standing next to Jesus becomes your prophetic word because you know he's right there next to you.
That's your reality. That's your higher truth. That is, yeah, it supersedes everything. Yeah.
It's not prophetic at that point. It's like, well, I just heard him say it. Why didn't you? You know, it's not. It doesn't seem like I just heard something nobody else did.
Yeah.
It's just I heard something.
Uh-huh.
You know, I assume you did too.
Yeah. Yeah. Had those moments too. Yeah. No,
it's not to say sorry. That kind of came off like I'm thinking everybody should be on my level or something
No.
like that. But what I meant
I know what
is
you're
the surety of it, your confidence in what God is telling you should be to that level where it's just so second nature that, you know, you shouldn't be like questioning all of the little pieces of it.
Yeah, and we actually, I don't know if you saw last week's episode, we literally discussed this a little bit last week when it comes to knowing God's time, you know, how God has a time for everything and a season, you know. We literally read that entire passage out of Ecclesiastes, and how it's so vitally important to follow Jesus' example of being plugged in and knowing God's will in a certain time or a certain season, or what God's doing, you know, and what you should be doing in response or relation to that. Because, I mean, Jesus is the perfect example. I mean, like you said, he didn't do anything unless he saw Father do it or heard the Father say it, you know, so it's...
Or unless his mom told him.
Or unless his mom, yeah.
Exactly.
That's exactly what she said, too. That's so funny. So, yeah.
Mother's Day's coming up.
Mother's Day is coming up, everyone. Think of your mother.
I mean,
so.
like in a month and a.
Yeah. But yeah, it is really important though to be plugged in and know in a certain moment. Okay, I'm supposed to be doing this. It's vitally important for me to be doing this and to know, to recognize God in that moment. So, yeah, it's so many topics, so many fun topics to talk about here. But I don't want to take all of your night here though. But
I mean, we do.
we do. But yeah, I'd rather just have them on again at some point to talk about things again. But usually what we'll do is have our guests, you know, do if you have like a closing statement of any kind, feel free to give it. Otherwise, you know, a closing
like
statement.
a closing argument.
Closing
Yes.
arguments.
The lawyer part of Eric is coming.
Oh,
out
that
again.
just slipped out. Yeah. Anyways, or close with a prayer, declaration, prophetic word, whatever it might be, whatever God puts on your heart. But yeah, so I don't know if you have anything that God's putting on your heart to close with, or otherwise we can close with a prayer. Or, so.
That's what we usually do.
Prayer is good.
Like, really.
So who wants to start it? Who wants to start it? Any
I'll start.
volunteers? All right, yeah, here we go.
Well, thank you, Jesus, for tonight. Thank you for the blessings that you've given us. Thank you for this night and everything that we've gotten to share. I pray that everything that you wanted to say will be sealed where it needs to be sealed, Father. Everything you wanted to put out there would make it to where it needs to go, Father. Pray that any encouragement that you've intended lands as encouragement. And I pray for everyone that's listening. Pray that you would give them peace, comfort, joy, and power, Father. Give them the confidence that they need to walk in everything that you created them to be. And help them to never, ever settle for anything less than what you created them to be. In Jesus' name.
Amen. Huh? Well, thanks for joining us again. Hope to see you next week, same time, same place. Don't forget on Saturday, the what?
What?
Concert, right? Or what festival? What do you call it? Concert
It's
festival?
the What Concert.
What Concert is in Wyckoff,
Don't forget to get there at 5 o'clock. Get your
Good
free
time?
T-shirt.
I just
I think it's
posted
5
it.
o'clock, right?
Let me look.
Yeah. Tara's double checking,
I
but
just have
it's
the
an
thing right
awesome
here.
time.
Doors open at 5, show starts at 6. Free
5.
admission, food and games.
Hopefully everyone heard that. So.
Free t-shirts to the first 100 guests.
Okay, so get there early. Yeah.
And the stunt dudes will be there, and the trampolines.
Yep, trampolines are awesome. Look them up on YouTube. Awesome, very professional group. Should be an awesome time. So we'll see you there.